Welcome to the Jaime Fleres Podcast, a sanctuary for soulful creatives, leaders, and heart-centered humans navigating the edges of creativity, authentic expression, and personal growth. I'm your host, Jaime Fleres, author and transformational guide. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to sit down with my dear friend and colleague, Laura Cardwell. Today, we're going to talk about burnout, identity, and midlife as not necessarily crisis, but initiation or even calling. Laura is a transformational coach, speaker, and co-author of Unstuck Yourself, where neuroscience meets soul work and burnout becomes a doorway to purpose. She specializes in guiding women through midlife transitions using a blend of human design, applied neurology, energy medicine, and lived experience. Laura helps women stop abandoning themselves and start leading from who they truly are now. I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you, Laura.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Jaime. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I will rein in it.
You don't have to. We can both be our Libra excitement.
Yeah.
Golden retriever selves.
Totally. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have so much goodness to talk about today. I mean, I know you and your co-author, Megan O'Malley, just published this beautiful book called Unstuck Yourself, Thrive Beyond Burnout and Discover Your True Purpose. So I would just love to dive in wherever you want to start as far as let's talk about burnout. Let's talk about identity. Let's talk about midlife. Let's talk about women. Let's just talk about all of it.
Let's expand time so that we can do all of that in a listenable time. Yeah. So, just the book first, kind of the thing about that book is it was magically, Megan and I were invited to write that book, and it was a pretty magical experience for both of us. But it was also the book that we knew we needed. We couldn't find that book in the world, right? Like there's a lot of books on hacking your life, and there's a lot of books on, healing your nervous system and nervous system regulation. And there's a lot of books on human design, but we weren't finding a place where we could really pull all of that together. And I think what I had been discovering in my own work really kind of before we started writing the book was that there's a time period in our lives, and we'll get to this in a little while, this kind of midlife time period in which burnout becomes kind of a signal. It's like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be listening to this moment and not just kind of plowing through and surviving. And personally, I found myself twice in a full-on diagnosable burnout, the adrenal fatigue. And once was the first time I had ventured into entrepreneurship. I had an art jewelry business. I loved making jewelry. And I grew that company too fast and with not enough support systems, because I loved it. And, we can talk more about why I could do that in a minute. But I literally hit a wall where I had grown it too big for me to be able to manage on my own, but not big enough for me to really hire a team to make jewelry with me. And so I just hit some major walls of burnout, and I ended up basically closing that company overnight. Like on Sunday night, I got home from a show, and my best friends were like, "Hey, are you sure wasn't this supposed to be kind of a fun thing that you were doing?" And I was like, "Oh, right, fun. I forgot about that in my life, And then the next day, I was just so tired. And when I went to the doctor, they were like, "Yeah, you're like in complete adrenal fatigue," meaning that I had no energy, none, And so it took me about 6 months to even really get my feet under me after that. And then as soon as I did, I kind of did it again. I created I trained in applied neurology. I was doing this thing called brain integration. I was fascinated by it. The idea that we can reroute neural pathways by working with the energy of the brain and helping, ADD, ADHD, and learning difference, kids and adults. And I really loved that. I grew that one faster because I had a demand. And so then I had a clinic, and I opened a clinic, and I had people, and I had all the things, but I didn't really have the right structures underneath me, things I'm learning again. And then I ended up back having to close that clinic and back in kind of this major adrenal burnout moment. So that's kind of that's the heart of where I got to writing this book was knowing a ton about the nervous system and the and the physical body and the emotional body and the mental body and the spiritual body and why we burn out. But also I had been there, like I literally had been there a couple of times. And so, so that's kind of how we took to that book, is like, wait, burnout isn't just about being tired. It's about being out of alignment with who I'm here to be, my purpose, and then also how I'm meant to move through the world. So yeah, that's kind of like the long-winded answer to the book in the first place, but it's taken me on a journey, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Gosh, there's so many things in what you just shared that I'd love to like pull out and look at with you. I mean, a couple of things. One, I definitely want to talk more about burnout as a signal and what it means and what, like how to move when we find ourselves in that territory. And maybe I'll just put a pin in that. And then the other thing I really want to talk about is the process of building a business, especially as a woman, especially as a sensitive, like, because thinking about hearing you track the growing too fast, like kind of getting into that sticky middle where things are going really well, but you don't have the right systems. So let's just put that one off to the side for a minute, maybe first, or is there one of those you want to take next? Because those two are really juicy for me.
Yeah, let's go. Let's just do them in order.
Okay. Yeah. So burnout as a signal, and you started to talk a little bit about what it is signaling and out of alignment, but let's kind of maybe slow that down and talk more about burnout, because I think this is an experience that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah. Well, me too, right? Again, I think I'm meant to, the way I'm designed to move through the world is I kind of have to live it first. I have to kind of go through it and figure it out. And then I'm like, oh, wait, here are all the hacks that I can share with you about like all the things I learned. And so I think for me, I was in such a physical state of burnout, and just naming, burnout on a physical level is really about your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys. They produce cortisol. And so when we hear a lot of people in the world of nervous system regulation talk about fight or flight responses, or the system that keeps us safe, our safety response, the neurology of that, the direct physical result of that is that that fight or flight system, that is a neurological system, it happens in the brain, it activates the adrenal glands and it produces extra cortisol so that we can survive a situation, right? That's the juice it takes to outrun the tiger kind of moment that you hear people, the proverbial tiger will say, right? And so when you put yourself into drive with no braking system, with no real, like nothing can run on drive forever. And that's what that adrenal system is meant to do. It's like drive now. And in a regulated nervous system, it also has this moment to shut off. So if you think about all the nature videos you've ever seen and the proverbial tiger chasing its prey, if the prey is able to outrun the tiger or get safe, it will kind of shake it off and then go about life. There's no emotional context about this experience being right or wrong. There's no long-term trauma or damage from the tiger chasing it in the first place. It's like, oh, I did what I had to do in the moment and now it's done. It's a moment to moment thing. And then I'll be ready. I'll be ready the next time I need to, but I don't need to think about it in between or ruminate on it or prepare for it. Like it's just the natural state of on off. Yeah. But in our culture and in human beings, we have all of this emotional context that we put on it. And so we can get stuck in that drive mode, in that, like, I'm being chased all the time. I'm being chased by what I can't rule out as irrelevant in my life, or, a boss that is maybe extra crunchy. And I just cannot rule that out as not traumatic to my system in some kind of way. And so, for me, it was just the internal push to go all the time. Like, and all of that, I can say now in retrospect, was being driven by the parts of me that didn't feel that they were worth it. I mean, at the base of all of it was really self-worth. I wasn't worth the rest. What I knew wasn't enough. I needed to keep pushing. I needed to keep learning, growing, and then proving myself. And so I was constantly proving my value. Now I have since learned, like, oh, that was all that underlying stress was really my own self not valuing myself. And so trying to prove myself to everyone around me all the time by more knowledge, more classes, a bigger clinic, just and we're encouraged to do that in this culture. Like, we're encouraged to prove ourselves. We're not, that's just the way a hustle culture is set up, right? It's
Yeah.
like, and so for me, it's also about like kind of the re-rack, right? Like, a nervous system needs time to stop, to like get out of the fight or flight response. And if you don't make that time and it's on all the time, then it'll eventually physically drain the battery, which is like draining the adrenals. For me, that's what was happening. And so I would just hit this, like, these boom and bust cycles. I would just go hard because I was trying to prove myself. And then I was building something that wasn't sustainable because I was building too fast. Both times I built faster than I could build the structures that would have supported me. And so we tend to think about burnout on this really physical level. Like, I'm tired. I joke now in my life, in my community, that I have no more F's to give about anything, like, suddenly I might feel like I just need to throat punch everyone. It's like your mood stability goes away, your sleep gets disrupted, you're not really functioning in wellness. You're just functioning, and we tend to think about burnout from that perspective. But burnout can also be emotional. Like, there's an emotional drain in my life that I just can't seem to, if like for example, you can burn out by being an angry person, by just not being able to move the anger and sitting in anger cycles. You can burn out from grief, not being able to move and process the grief fully and sitting in a grief cycle. And all emotions just need a story arc. You need to finish the arc of the emotion so it moves completely. Otherwise, we get stuck in the loop and we can burn out with that. We can burn out mentally, which is that fight or flight response and all of the pathways, which we can dive into what the seeking system really is and how we get stuck kind of chasing dopamine, chasing the little hits from our boss that says you did a good job, versus really realigning internally with, like, why am I here? My deeper purpose, which is kind of what the book is about. And we can come back to that in just a minute. And then we can burn out spiritually, which is like, I've literally disconnected from something bigger than me and I'm just running the rat race. And without some sort of sense that we're here for a greater purpose, we don't have anything to root into. And if we don't have anything to root into, then the systems don't run well. They don't connect to anything. And there's no long-term, and we see the result of that in a world that feels very disconnected from each other, from something bigger than ourselves, from nature in general, right? Like, you can call that bigger thing whatever you want. You can call it God if you have a religion. You can call it nature if you don't. In science, we call it 0-point energy. There is a name for it across the board, but it is something that is there when everything else is out of the equation, And so it's like, there's an animation to me. And if I'm disconnected from that, nothing else really runs the way it's supposed to. So we have to start looking at it from the perspective of all of it and not just one piece. If we just treat physical burnout, it's just going to happen again because there was something else there was an emotional, mental, or spiritual issue going on there that we just overlooked.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a complex, like, I'm getting the image of like a pressure cooker. Like, there's this confluence of forces. Because even before, you were talking about the actual, like, the proverbial tiger that we're running from, right? Like, what that looks like in the modern era. And then, so there's that, like, just the conditions in which we live, the digital saturation, the, like, always on nature of our world these days. And then sort of the under layers, which are like the drivers of, like, do we feel like we can turn off? Do we feel like we get to rest? Do we have the worth? Are we driven by proving? So there's all those, like, inner drivers within a context that already sets us up, right, for the conditions of overwhelm and burnout. And then you so beautifully just laid out for us all these layers of our own being, right? The physical aspect of burnout, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. You laid that out also beautifully. So as someone who's listening to this, who's like, yes, 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 and they recognize that. I mean, I myself can raise my hand. Like, I've been, like, hovering the drain of burnout in my own entrepreneurial life many, many times, like we could say right now. And so if someone is listening to this, they're like, yes, yes, yes. What is because it can also feel overwhelming, right? Because there's so many different levers that are moving. Where do you start with people or where does your book bring people? Like, what are the key places to start if you're like, yes, I'm here, right here with you?
Yeah. I personally think that you kind of have to do a both and when I get a client who's coming to me because they are seriously burnt out,
Yeah.
the very first thing we're doing is supporting them physically because they're just, so we're looking at like, are they resourced enough to take a break? What does their system need? I mean, that might be referring them to someone who is like getting them on they may need some support, like supplemental support. They may need to make some lifestyle changes that help support those things. So we have to look at what's physically happening in their life.
Yeah. Triage, right?
Yeah, we get triage, right?
Yeah.
Like we are, we are in the emergency room of burnout in that
Stop
moment.
the bleeding
Right?
first.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and we can't just skip over that. We can't just skip to like, well, let's dig into your life purpose. You do not have the cares about life purpose when you're so damn tired.
Yeah.
And probably I'm going to venture to guess most people that actually hit levels of burnout, they are also going through this kind of midlife transition. And we'll talk about that in a little while too, which is kind of amplifying some of that. And that's why I say it's not necessarily meant to be a problem necessarily, but like a portal. Like, oh, wait, there's information here and I need to listen. So we kind of triage it first.
Yeah.
And then I think right now, Jaime, in our world in general, we are having to learn what self-regulation is, period. Like it is a skill set that we are not taught, and I'm a Gen Xer and the generation before me is the boomer generation, and emotional context, emotional regulation, emotional conversations were like, no, it's a no-go zone, right? So we don't have, we have a gap in even the model of what to do with emotions, right? So, and I'm not blaming boomers by any means, like they are products of their parents and they're products of their parents and they're products of their parents. And all of them are products of larger stories that are going on in history and culture. So I'm not blaming, but I'm saying that I do think we're at a critical mass of learning how to emotionally regulate. And what that means is, do I have the tools? Do I know how to find that place in me where there is peace and calm? Mm-hmm. And then use that as a resource to like look at where I'm out of balance in other ways. Yeah. And so I think the first starting point is emotional regulation with people, like other than the triage. Yeah. The first point is, do you even believe there is a place inside of you that is completely neutral and is only the space of love and healing? Mm-hmm. And then from there, can we learn to grow that space and use it as a deeper connection to self, as a place to get curious and observant about my life? Most of the time, fear as an emotion shuts down curiosity. It doesn't want to look around. It wants to stay. It only wants to know what it knows right in front of it, because to have wider perspective doesn't feel safe. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's like, and we see that kind of mirrored all over the world, where people zero in on my way, not your way, me, not you, othering, all of that. Mm-hmm. That's all fear-based. I've closed down curiosity. So I would say when you're feeling really overwhelmed, and this is kind of the heart of the book, is like there's this Prosper framework in that book that is about what are the qualities of that space where I can be centered, I can be open, I can be curious. I can start to wonder about my burnout. I can start to wonder what's happening in my life. I can start to wonder what needs to shift. And then we can start to take baby steps towards, if a major thing needs to change, that often the bigness of what needs to change is what shuts everything down. Yeah. So you have to find a space that's bigger than the change. And there's only one space in us that's bigger than the change. And I personally believe that's our heart space. And we know scientifically that the heart space is the energetic energy that brings the rest of the brainwaves into balance. That's called heart-brain cohesion. So the first tool that I give my burnout people is access to heart-brain cohesion, which comes from heart math, which was actually this amazing research that's been going on for 30 plus years now. But originally they were just studying the heart, like how the heart functions. Yeah. And then they realized like, oh, the heart has this huge electromagnetic field. And also that electromagnetic field in coherence will bring all of the brain waves into coherence. And so how do we teach people to connect those two things, And so, so that's where I would tell people to start, is like, if you don't know about heart brain coherence, it can change your life. It literally is the one tool that I think if we taught every human how to just get quiet, go to their heart, activate a higher vibration emotion like gratitude or compassion, or just even neutral, even nothing will do something. But like if we bring in like compassion or gratitude or love, and we just hold the vibration of that emotion, it's like a tuning fork. And you hold this vibration, and what a tuning fork does is it will make everything else come into resonance with it, into flow. And we see that's not woo, y'all, that's science. Like we can watch it happen with waveform, like it's not, although I believe in woo and science. So I'm just telling you though, like if you're like, oh, I don't know, tuning forks are woo. And I'm like, no, they're sound therapy, they're science, there are woo things, but that's not it, so that's where I would start with people, is like, can you do that? That simple step, and then commit to just that one step.
Yeah. It sounds like what I also hear, you were talking about in burnout, that inability to, like, there's all this drive with the inability to hit stop. And it also sounds like this is a place where you're giving your system some room to toggle or move between states. So maybe the drive state happens, but it coexists with this kind of heart-based presence. Would you say, from your experience and your expertise, that there's this toggle that can happen between those two, and that is a start to beginning to regulate the system and bring us back out of burnout?
Yeah. So the science of burnout is that we have this neural system, the sympathetic nervous system, or I lost that word. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. And the autonomic nervous system is what it's, the whole nervous system is called the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic is that fight or flight. Right. And then the parasympathetic is what we call rest and digest. It's off, right? So it's on or off. And when we are really attuned to nature, when we are really, really attuned to nature, as nature is tuned to nature, there's nothing in between. It's off or it's on. Yes. That's it. And we've lost the art of off and on. And that's part of what we're having to reclaim. That's part of, we're having to relearn the ability to shut it off, to toggle between them, right? And so if we're in on all the time, we literally just have to start by teaching it to turn back off. Yeah. And then the more we teach it to turn back off, the faster we turn it off. And the faster we turn it off is called resilience. So it's like we build the capacity by practicing practices that help us turn it off. Yeah. We build the capacity to do it faster, or even not turn it on when it's not, like eventually the goal is I don't even register that as stress, because it isn't to me. It doesn't need to be stress to me. Like that boss is not an actual tiger. That deadline is not an actual tiger, right? It's like, can I actually move through the world not turning it on at every red light to begin with? So yeah, yes, the toggling is a really great example of what happens the more you use that heart brain cohesion and other tools. It's not the only one. I just think it's a really great one because it's easy. And I think when someone is at capacity, if you try and give them a complicated something to follow, they're not going to do it. No. They don't have the bandwidth for it. I didn't, right? Like, and so if somebody told me to sit down and meditate for 20 minutes a day, I was like, yeah, you can F right off. Like, I don't have time for that, like, yeah. Tell me when you have time for that, like I have 2 kids and this and this and this. I mean, I could have made space, but I wasn't ready to value it yet because I didn't know it had value. Yeah. So it's like, you have to give them little bites. Yeah. Gosh, there's like 5 places I want to take this conversation right now. One, let's just talk about the circumstance too, because I'm curious about this. Because we do, talking about the conditions that we live in, right? We're on this like 24-hour, like always can be engaged, could always be working, like there isn't like I'm at the factory and I'm home. For a lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, like we have this phone right in our hands. We could do anything at any time, right? You could work at 3 a.m. if you wanted to. And we also have the confluence of pressures around
monetization of our gifts and making money and surviving and paying for our lifestyles that are increasingly more expensive. So I want to make sure we're not gaslighting too, as it's so important to do the inner work. But also I wonder if we just spend a moment like naming the context in which we live. And then I'm curious for you, as you've navigated this in your own life and you've guided other people through it, if we're being with the reality of all these confluence of conditions that are that like create a pressure cooker just circumstantially, how do we begin to divest our energy in some of that so that we can reclaim our own grounded well-being? Like, what are some things that you would say about that?
I think neurologically, I think what happens is we actually get addicted to the stress.
Yeah.
And we get addicted to the mini rewards that are happening in a pressurized container. So if you think about the fact that you have that phone in your hand all the time, and you can think about all of the ways you are unconsciously just opening that and checking your social media or checking your emails. Every time you get a new email, it's like we forget that that is actually a reward system. It is actually activating a little bit of like this little drop of dopamine that says new mail. Remember when it used to be like, when it first came out, I'm old, y'all. I'm 49. And when mail first came out, I almost called it Gmail, but it wasn't. It was email, like it was like when it first
AOL,
came
probably.
out, yeah, AOL, it used to have it literally said to you, you've got mail.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like you were getting, yeah, you were getting a little dopamine for it, right? And so when we look at the dopamine system, and it's actually used against us quite a bit in this pressurized container, right? Like the marketers know this. The people that are developing softwares, they know this. They want you so locked in on your TikTok and so locked in on your Instagram that you do not stop scrolling, right? And then they reward you for creating content that keeps people on your page at least long enough, right? So it's like, this is not new. This is psychology and neurology, right? Like we know that this is an addictive pathway. And so when we are looking at a reward system that is dopamine driven, it's all external, it's all externalized, and it is rewarded for staying in the pressure cooker. So the thing that we actually need is, so what is the antidote to getting out of the pressure cooker?
Yeah.
And that's really what, like where we talk about in the book, it's purpose. And what I mean by purpose is who I'm being first is my purpose, who I'm meant to be. Am I being who I'm meant to be? My highest expression of myself. And then from there, it's why I do what I do. And then from there, it's what I do. But when we really start to look at like the way that the whole neurological circuit works as it goes through the pleasure and reward system, when it gets into some of the higher cognitive areas, what we'll say like that executive functioning area, it actually becomes the pathway of curiosity and innovation and imagination. And the whole point is to get us to question, to be curious. The whole point of our brains is to get us to be, then it's not an answering system, it's a question system. And so it's meant to get us asking like, oh, but why? And I wonder. And as soon as we do that, we are literally pre-programmed to wonder why. And then what is the deeper meaning? Like we will, some of us more than others, but like everyone is programmed to seek something deeper. And so part of the burnout journey is like, oh, I've been stuck out here and I'm being asked to ask what's in here, to like, who am I in relationship to this pressure cooker that I've been handed? And how do I relate to it? How do I move through it in alignment? How do I make the right choices for this being and not everyone in the way they want me to make decisions?
Right.
And, that is what we call internalized seeking. And internalized seeking activates a whole different cocktail of neurotransmitters, including oxytocin, which is our bonding neurotransmitter and hormone. It's the one that makes us care about other people at all, because dopamine will just keep us right here. Me, 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 me. Yeah. Oxytocin asks us to be more than that. Like, who am I connected to? What's something deeper? Am I connected to something bigger than myself? Am I connected to the people around me? And then serotonin, which stabilizes our mood. We call that the happy neurotransmitter, right? We eat chocolate and carbs to get serotonin, right? So it's like we have to learn to use that system to stabilize the dopamine system.
Yeah.
Because everybody is a little bit ADD now because of the way that we are pressurized to use dopamine as a reward system in that whole container, right?
Yeah.
So it's like not an option to figure out then, well, what about who am I in relationship to this thing that's bigger than me? And
Yeah.
that is the stabilizing moment, right? It's like, oh, wait, I don't have to be all these things that they're telling me I have to be, but I have to be willing to question that. And that's, that's where the gap usually is
Yeah.
the willingness, the curiosity, because most of the time if you think about a dopamine driven wheel, why would we look up? We're just kind of doing and doing and doing that's the grind. That's hustle culture. And they want us doing that because if we're not questioning anything else, we're not questioning them.
Yeah.
Like the inner power is to question.
Yeah.
So there was a lot in there too. Sorry, Jamie.
No, that's amazing. No, it's amazing. I'm tracking you. So I'm curious, I'm just thinking about listeners who are like, oh my gosh, I see this. Like I see the way that I'm kind of like running outside of myself. Cause what I hear you speaking to, like if I were to boil it all down, is like the out to in kind of pathway where everything's coming at us. There's this constant stimulus that we're just simply kind of not even responding to, but maybe reacting to, or just being like pummeled by. And then there's the inside out system, right? Which is like, I come here first and everything I'm sourcing from is here. I'm not sourcing out here, I'm sourcing in here. So for those who are listening, who are like, oh my gosh, yes, I kind of get the places where I've been kind of stuck in the dopamine drive and I'm curious about this other piece. You mentioned the heart coherence as one practice, but what are some ways that people can even just begin to introduce this inside out way of being and this switch? Because it's another switch too. And not to create binaries here, but this other way of moving in the world, right? Moving from purpose, moving from our why, and then to the what. How do we start to make that transition back to our own sovereignty, really?
Yeah. I think that's been I think that's why I ended up in this space in my life, is because that's really been my journey. Like, what is this deeper thing I'm being called to? And for me, I've had several kind of stop lines in my timeline of like, oh, that. And all of them have had to do with these moments, these kind of critical mass moments where I was like, but why? What's that deeper something here? Like including having having a near death experience at 19 and knowing that I was kind of going back because I wasn't done, so that's the first time that it's like there's more to your life than just being this being in this realm, and I think you hear that from near death experience a lot, like, oh wait, I came back because I knew I wasn't done yet. I have a purpose. I have something I'm here to serve. And serving isn't always doing. I serve by being who I'm meant to be, right? And then from there, I do in a way that's in alignment for me, us, and we. And so that's service and that's leadership, right? So it's like, I think I've had these moments throughout my life where, like, even between burnouts, when I was kind of after my art career and before I became an applied neurologist, I was really thinking about I was thinking about every entrepreneur dreams, or solopreneur, I should say, or small business owners. Like, what's that job that I can just go do? That's like the easy thing, like Trader Joe's. Cause everybody in Trader Joe's is always smiling at everyone. And I'm like, yes, I just want to go work at Trader Joe's. But I had this deeper sense of like, I was being called towards something. I think if we listen, we are being called towards something. Yeah. And so for me, it's always been this kind of undercurrent of, but why? Why are you here? What, like, it's got to be more than just to, make your change and pay your bills. Like, there's got to be a deeper something. So I think I was already wired to kind of question that a little bit differently. But for me, I needed support. And so that is where archetypal work really landed in my life, because archetypes are kind of the bridge between our spirituality and our mental, emotional, and physical self. They're like, I actually started studying, I'm working on my doctorate, and my research is really in perception. And what I found was that, like, what we know now neurobiologically is what we perceive becomes the thought and the emotion and the feeling and the genetic expression. It's all one collapsed event, we would call it in quantum physics. And so it's like, I started to think about, like, well, how I perceive my world is as important as how I'm being in the world. And so archetypes kind of become this unconscious filter what we are looking through, the lens. You can think about that like if I put glasses on of different architects, now I'm looking through those glasses and that's how I see the whole world, right? And so that's when kind of deeper archetype work started to show up for me. And we're all pre-programmed to want to take a personality quiz because we're pre-programmed to want to know more about who we really are, why we're really here, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we're drawn to those things in the first place. And so that's when human design really showed up for me in my life. And at first I was kind of resistant. It's a very complicated system. And I didn't, that there's this sense that you have to learn all of the language to know any of it. It's kind of the same in astrology, like you can know a little bit and throw it around, but it has no impact until you really embody it in a way. Yeah. And so at first I was kind of resistant, but the more I learned about it and the more I started to work with it with clients, it was like, oh, we have a map. We have a map to who we're here to be. Yeah. We've been given the whole thing, like, and human design is a blend of different archetypal systems for the listeners. It's a blend of astrology. Astrology is included in the overall human design component. And so is the I Ching from Chinese medicine. And so is the chakra system. And so is the Kabbalah. So it's this very deep, very comprehensive. If you think about it, it's like everybody has a thumbprint, right? We know that. Your human design is like your energetic thumbprint, is like the very nuanced differences between you and me. But it isn't about boxes. It isn't about saying like, this is who I am. And so I just stay in this box. It's understanding that all archetypes are a dynamic relationship. Like I'm in a dynamic relationship with my type. It doesn't define me. We all have all of the chart, right? Like we are all of the archetypes. It's not, I'm only this one thing. It's about learning how. One of the things I really loved about human design when I really started to learn it was it's really about how I move through the world and how I interact with other people and how I'm meant to serve, and not who and what, and, like kind of more boxy thoughts. And so I think human design with the right facilitator, because it can also feel really overwhelming with, I think it is the map. I think it is the thing we're missing, because it is returning you to you. It's like, that's one of the things I really love is like, you didn't go anywhere, but you can get so caught up in that dopamine cycle that you don't have time to explore who I am and why I'm here and how I interact with the world around me. But just a little bit of exploration creates a lot of alignment. Like there's about 4 or 5 things that if you really understood about your own human design, and that's also in the book, the types are in the book. If you really understood those, they will lay the foundation for much more alignment, a lot less boom and bust, a lot less chasing. And there's some really quick ways to start to embody human design without having to know all of it as well.
So is it fair to say, as we begin to maybe shift from that constant kind of outward dopamine drive cycle into these deeper layers of self, like coming to the inside and spending enough time there to get curious about what it is, who we are, how we're designed, that a great tool, like a great place for people to start is to start with something like human design, astrology, like start to learn your inherent innate design, and then start to kind of build a life from that, like from that wisdom, from that relationship that you have with that wisdom. Yes. Is that
yeah.
fair?
Yeah. So, and that's why, so in the Unstuck Yourself book, we only introduce the 5 types. There are 5 that, there's lots and lots of archetypes inside the human design system, but kind of the overarching theme is that there are 5 types. And so we started there because really burnout for many people is just being out of alignment with your type.
Yeah.
And so if you really understand your type and then some other things about your type, it can really start to shift those things. And so
type, for people listening, is like manifester, manifesting generator, projector, reflector, right?
Yep.
Those are the 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Awesome. I want to take us back to that question. I've still been kind of holding it in the field around this journey, especially because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and that piece that you were talking about where you build something, right? You're passionate. Maybe it is even aligned with your purpose, something that you really love, like you said, like how much joy jewelry brought to you, for example. But then we sort of have this kind of pathway that takes us like a little bit too much too fast, or growth without systems and structures that can help us sustain it. I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs go through. I'm
Oh,
curious,
absolutely.
knowing your experience with that, and I've been there too. What would you do differently now if you were to start something new? Like, what would be some things that you would gesture from, ways that you would gesture, ways that things you would do and not do? Like, how would you do it differently, knowing that that is kind of the default pathway for so many of us in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so like this is the juice of my life, right? Like
Yeah.
and also my jewelry business was aligned, right? Like
Yeah.
I was living my passion. And we're a little bit sold in that pressure cooker the idea that if you build it, they will come,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and no one is really telling you inside of that if you build it, you also have to market it, and you also have to create social media, and you also have to have sales funnels, and you also have to have upsells, downsells, and different email campaigns that cover all of those. No one tells you all of that,
Yeah.
right? Like they just say, do the thing you love, and doing the thing you love will create a business in which, everything is rosy. There is a component of doing the thing you love, and a lot of things get easy. I 100%, and human design says that everywhere,
Yeah.
that if you build around, you will inevitably fail if you build around just trying to make money,
Yeah.
right? Like if you try and build a business, especially as we're evolving as humans, it will eventually, you might have a boom cycle, but you will have a bust cycle. Like it's
Yeah.
gonna, they're gonna hit those things. So I think it's, for me, it's tender. Like there's this tender moment of like an entrepreneur, and especially a solopreneur or a small business entrepreneur, that's like, it's a lot on your shoulders, like it's a lot on your shoulders. And so it's interesting that you asked the question, like if I were to do it now,
Yeah.
like, because I am doing it now, like I am actually in the process of a full revamp of my entire, it's building upon something I've already done before, but I'm kind of in a re-rack moment. Um and and part of that is because I was like, oh wait, there are many things about what I have built over, especially over since COVID. I when COVID happened, and the pivot I had to make, because my clinic was closed because I was deemed non-essential. And I was already kind of starting to feel a little burnt out in the realm of what I was doing, but I wasn't really ready to admit that to myself. And so the universe did it for me. And in the pivot, I still built something that I thought I could offer, because I needed to be able to offer something, versus really building something around what I desired, like what I really wanted. And so inevitably that grew, but towards a thing I didn't really want.
Yeah.
And so I kind of also hit the same moment of like, and when you do that, it can be very hard from the inside to make a change. Like every entrepreneur knows a pivot inside a system can be challenging. Like it's like, and also every entrepreneur knows letting go of the thing will be successful, to reach for something that you're not so sure about, but it feels better. That takes emotional regulation, right? It takes the ability to be a leader in your own self,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, so I am kind of in this moment of like, oh no, I need to build a business that's totally aligned with me, like, and it needs to be aligned in a lot of different ways. And so I think through that process, this time, I'm a generator in those 5 types.
Mhm.
This time I am not trying to initiate things. I'm trying to respond to what really feels right to me, because my whole life, a lot of what I built was based on the idea that I was trying to initiate. I was trying to start something, I'd have a thought, like, and then I would just like dig into that thought and try and make something happen with that thought,
Yeah.
instead of sitting with the thought long enough for an opportunity to come to me, and that's how I'm designed. And so it's even little things like that. And when I do, I mean, my worst fear is that nothing will come to me. That's what generators fear. Like
Yeah.
if I just sit and wait for something to respond to, and that's not exactly what that looks like. And I can talk more about that, but it's like, if I'm just waiting to respond, then nothing's ever going to happen. And I'm not going to get to bring my dream into fruition. And that's just not how it works. Right. So it's
Yeah.
like, it takes a ton of self-trust. It takes a ton of self-worth and a lot of confidence to know, to build the thing that you're building. to dream it. You build it in dreams. You build the website, you build the things, and then you wait for the opportunity to bring it to the world because that's divine timing. And I'm not pushing against divine timing. So I think you do when you learn, like for me, human design has been very centered in how I'm rebuilding this time. And it has been so much easier. Well, one, I feel really clear about like, oh, I've been through some midlife mayhem, and like it just all has kind of come together in understanding like how important it is that we have this conversation right now, especially for our generation. And I've had to, like, I couldn't have done it 10 years ago. I didn't know what I needed to know yet.
Yeah.
Like it's all been building on itself so that I could. So yeah, I think that's it, Jaime. It's like human design became this, well, there's this amazing human. Her name is Anna Nichols. She founded the Spiritual Business Incubator, and she literally teaches people how to create a company. And this isn't always coaches and healers and creatives. It's how to be in your business aligned with your human design. And she, what she saw in the world is a lot of solopreneurs and entrepreneurs don't actually know how to have a business. And so we have a passion, but we don't necessarily know. We know enough. And if you're a one line like me, you might take 1,000 classes trying to figure it all out, but you may need a better business model. Like we know from small business statistics that most small businesses don't write a business plan, especially when they're creatives and entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. Small business, it's like, that's the book, The E-Myth, like that. If you've ever read that book, it's been around for a long time, but it's the idea that like I centered this company around the fact that I had a skill or a gift, but I don't actually know how to run a company. And how can I make this company be a thing that I'm not the very center of? Right. And that is the pivot that I think is really hard for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, which I almost think should be illegal. I think there should be no such thing as a solopreneur because you should at least have an admin.
Yeah.
But that's what I know now is like, if you don't have the funding, find it. And there are plenty of worlds now where there's plenty of ways in which you can get a VA for, there's creating jobs all over the world for people, and there's no reason why to not have a VA at this point. There's even whole AIs that are VA systems, but don't do it by yourself. That's part of it is
the fast ticket to burnout to try. I know that from experience, like try to do it all yourself and see how it goes.
Yeah, it doesn't, but we're sold the story that it would if we hustle hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not always true. So
yeah. And it's going to cost you. I know that from experience. It costs you. And then when you're building, so I love that. And then when you're building this business kind of in a new, more like embodied worth, grounded, like sustainable way, how do you personally practice that toggle of turning off?
Yeah.
Like what are some things that really anchor you in something other than work, something other than the digital, something other than that drive? Like what are some of your favorite go-tos? Like what do you reach for to?
I think there's a couple different levels of what turning off looks like.
Yeah.
Right? For every one of us, I think there's the first level is some sort of Netflix situation, so I mean, like if you are binge watching Netflix, you have some level of burnout going on. I just want you to know, it is a symptom because you're just trying so hard to shut it down, right? Like that's what's really happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they are using your dopamine system to get you to stay watching episode after episode after episode. But so I think on like some levels, it's, can you even value yourself enough to spend the afternoon watching Netflix? Because you probably, if you're hustling hard, the idea of taking an afternoon off to do nothing is like, and I think you need a lot of permission that those moments are sometimes, for me, that's British mysteries. Like it's not just Netflix. It's actually every one of those apps that carries any type of mystery something. So, but British mysteries being kind of the center, or Murder, She Wrote. Those are the ones that I've always joked about. I've watched Murder, She Wrote my whole life, but it's like, there's something that happens when you let your brain zone out over here, you actually start to integrate some of what's going on back here. And you can, like, if you let yourself have that brainless time, whatever that is. Like I also am a romantasy consumer. I'll just say, like all of the jokes about romantasy are made about me. And my Kindle is full of smut. It's like, and there's this thing about that it's like, I'm not trying to process the information. I'm not trying to I also love like British mystery novels, Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes and all these things, but they make me think. Like I'm thinking, and there's something about a brainless activity. It can be a puzzle. Like I also like to do jigsaw puzzles. Mm-hmm. There's something about mindless activities in which you can it actually, there's science behind how it activates different parts of our brain, and what happens is what was going on back there integrates. And so when we give ourselves space to do that, mm-hmm. we actually, within usually a few days, we'll have the aha moment necessary that takes us through something where we're feeling really stuck, so I think there's that base level of like, do I even like allow myself to do nothing, because we tend to think of rest as sleep or, and if you don't value, just in general, when we talk about rest is the space between sleeping and doing, right? It isn't sleeping. Sleeping is sleep. Sleep is associated with rest, but a nap is a nap, and sleeping is sleeping, and resting is resting. And they are they're different things. They interact, you don't have to sleep to rest, but you do have to take your body out of something that is demanding something of you, right? So it's like, that can be going for a bike ride. That can be walking in the woods. That can be walking your dog. That can be watching Murder, She Wrote. That can be doing a puzzle. That can be, but you have to value yourself enough to give yourself that time.
Yeah.
And we're taught that time is not valuable, and that taking that time is lazy, and it's not. And especially when we really get into human design, there are 3 types that cannot go all the time the way that the other 2 types can. And if they do not take time to rest, they will inevitably burn out.
Yeah.
And more than that, if they don't listen to the burnout, they will inevitably end up with an autoimmune disease, like something that like a stress-induced disease in the body. And so it's not, we have to value it. That's ultimately so the first step is, can I value rest in my schedule? Can I make little spaces? And rest doesn't have to be hours of time.
Yeah.
A quality 15-minute, meditation or a walk for 15 minutes outside can reset everything pretty lovely. Yeah. And then you can keep going, but you have to value that space. And we are taught not to value liminal space. We're taught to pack every moment with something.
Yeah.
And then you can't, if you can't rest, there's no space for rest then. And so yeah, that's what I would say to that, is that you got to value, you have to value you, and you have to value rest. That's your first step.
Yeah. And there is some self-leadership piece in that too, right? Because it's like, if you're looking to the world to say, what do you value of me? The answer you're going to get is your work, your, another post, another offer, another something, another, or just even consuming. And so that's part of that self-leadership, is like, actually, I guide myself through my own rhythms and through what is necessary for my well-being. But it's like wresting that kind of like value paradigm back for ourselves. And that's no small thing, because we might have those internal voices and stories, right, that are like, I'm valuable when I'm producing, and then we have a culture that says, yes, you are, and we're going to pay you for it, and all the great things. We really have to, it's counterintuitive in some ways, right?
It's like a sacred rebel moment to take back rest as a valuable thing, because 100%. You're right that not only is it about like the kind of the doing component of things, but it's like, if you're being told all the time that your only value is in producing, and that's how you answer what your value is, right? Like, instead of, you're valuable because you exist right now with no other, like, that's it, that you're here. It's this sacred rebel moment of like, actually, I'm going to value that I need rest and go times. I need to toggle between them. And when I create a life around that, I actually create more abundance. I create more opportunity. I create more money. I create more, like, it's like more in the right way happens, and it's easier. I'm not saying life is always easy just because you're doing the work. Cause I actually think when you really start doing the work, life gets a little bit harder in a lot of ways. And we have this, like, we're kind of sold a story in the personal growth world that's like, oh, if you do the inner work, your life gets easier and abundant and prosperous and you have all this money. And it's like, oh, actually, no, doing the work makes me look at all the places why I don't have that.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, it's actually a little bit harder, but the depth of what you get from it is much broader. It's much richer. We go from just having a life that's kind of validated to a life that feels deeply satisfying.
Yeah. 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 I love that. Oh my gosh. So many things we could talk about. I'm like, I want to talk about identity and midlife. Maybe we could wrap those two together. Cause I do think maybe the place I want to take us next is that oftentimes, like, a burnout or a period of contraction in our business or something unplanned, maybe unpreferred, kind of comes along, and there's something about an identity shift. Like there hits, like, we hit this threshold moment. And so maybe we could talk about this in the context of midlife or just in general. But oftentimes we hit these moments, and I think it happens throughout the entrepreneur cycle too, is that we hit these, like, we could call them upgrades in identity or reevaluations or a new expression of ourselves that wants to come forward. Can we talk a little, like, what comes up for you around that idea of, like, identity and identity dissolution, identity, like the rebirth and the reemergence of something new? Like, yeah, how do we talk about that?
Like, that is oh God, that is where I'm just like, that is where my work has taken me. And I just think it's such a juicy space because it really is this kind of moment where it all comes together, right? Our identity is where it all comes together, where every perception and filter that we have on that archetypal level, and everywhere where we've created our own filters in our lifetime, or where we were given filters by the culture that we have, plus all of the thoughts and all of the emotions and all of the feelings and the sensations and the physicality and the genetics and the spirituality, it all comes together kind of around identity, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then also, if we observe nature, we see cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles. So you're not like, cycles aren't linear. They aren't like I'm working my way up to the top of something, right? Like, as soon as you're at the top, you're at the bottom of something else, right? It's like that's the way it works. And so, one of the things that I think has been really juicy for me, having gone through some really intense midlife kind of moments. I went through early menopause, but was kind of told that wasn't what was happening. And they just wanted to put me on Wellbutrin. And I was like, I think it's more than just like me being crazy. I am crazy right now, but like, I think it's more than that, like, can we look at something more than that? And so I went through all this. And of course, a one line that goes through something like that then gets their online education and everything about that. And they read every book and they, and so going through that, really what it all kind of boiled down to for me, Jaime, was identity work. I was like, oh, we literally go through these phases of going from me and who am I to us, like, or to like who, to us, like, who am I in relationship to the people closest to me, to my family unit, to my community. And then we become this kind of like, who am I in relationship to the whole, to this greater thing called humanity, to like the higher essence. And we see that cycle in 5 elements work. If we look at what the 5 elements do in Chinese medicine, if we look at an astrology chart, it moves you through those, the 4 quadrants move you through those, from me to us to we, kind of, and we see it in the way our life plays out, right? So we spend the first 30 years of our life kind of in me mode, like, living out the life that we think we're supposed to, and then we hit all of this midlife, like, effery. That's what, that's the best word I can say. It's like, we hit all of this midlife effery that kind of is there to disrupt it, right? So I think that really identity work is about disruption. It's disrupting what I was handed, and not just, at some point we will question, is this what I really want? And if we are not listening, that's when burnout happens, right? So it's like, we will get physical symptoms that say, okay, well, I was trying to get you to look, but but as we go through like midlife, one of the things that has been kind of the center of the pivot of my work has been specifically women in midlife, but it's all people in midlife go through these astrological transits that are there to create disruption.
Yeah.
And you cannot have transformation without disruption. You have to disrupt what was. And so you, like, your identity, when we first come into the world, is identity. We're given that identity. I mean, there are some things that are anchored in who am I? And
Right.
and the first 30 years, we're trying to figure out who am I in relationship to this identity you keep telling me I am. And
Right.
am I that or not? You know, like, and so, and then we go through midlife and it's like, but I'm not that. I know I'm not that. I don't want to be that. I don't like, that doesn't fit. That's not the jacket that I would wear. Those are not the socks that I would pick. This is not the life I ordered. This is not the droid I ordered. You know, like, it's like, this is kind of this moment of like, nope, nope. And this is the heroine's journey, right? Like, I've been living this life where I thought I was just this. And suddenly I have this kind of magical moment where I'm like, wait, I'm so much more than that. So if that's true, then what? You know, like, and then there's this quest of like, well, who am I in relationship to this bigger story? And that's kind of midlife. It's like, and I think we have these placements, you know, the midlife crisis is a placement. It's a Pluto square that kicks it off in our life, right? Yeah, it's like comes in hot, and then it's followed by all these ones that are like, but are you listening? But are you listening? But are you listening? But are you listening?
Yeah.
And your 40s are kind of packed with them. It's like there's this like intense, like your 40s and 50s are all about like not that, this, not that, this. Everything that's not authentic starts to burn away, and you start to get this really, really juicy depth and power and purpose and leadership that's emerging. And that's what we would say the crone energy is as you emerge out of menopause or midlife as a woman or a person that identifies as a woman. Like, there's this like juice you get from not being that anymore, from becoming. And I think it's like, in my own mind, it's such a cheesy thing, but it is the caterpillar to butterfly journey. You know, like, you're going through life as a caterpillar, just eating the apples, doing the thing. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm feeling called to build this chrysalis and do something. I don't even know. Can you imagine? Like, a caterpillar doesn't know it's coming. You know, they're just like, they just start doing the thing that they think they're supposed to. Like, there's this inner something that makes them build the chrysalis. We don't know what that is. You know, nature knows what that is. Source knows what that is. And they start building this container for themselves to melt the F down inside of, you know, like, and that is what midlife does to us, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we're going to get in here and lose an identity. We are literally going to lose everything we thought we knew.
Yeah.
And we need a safe container to completely go to muck. I mean, if you don't know that already, a caterpillar like completely goes to muck. There's not like, it doesn't grow from the wings don't grow from the caterpillar. The caterpillar disappears completely.
Ew, yeah.
And rebuilds itself as a butterfly, you know, and then now it's a butterfly inside this chrysalis. It's like, well, what, you know, now what, you know, and they don't know that their journey is going to take them into getting out of their chrysalis.
Yeah.
And they don't know what's on the other side. They don't know that they're becoming something totally new. They don't know. Yeah. They're just in response to what is happening around them. And so I think that is you can feel I know I can get talking really fast, but it's like, I think that is the identity work that starts to happen in midlife, is like, I literally cannot live this identity that you have given me anymore, that you're asking. And I think it's being deeply activated in women and people that identify as women right now. But also, if this isn't a gender thing, like, I want to make sure that I'm not discluding males from the mix. But I do think there is something specifically to the feminine that's being woken up in women. And it's because I think we need to return to a balance between masculine and feminine energies, and that is not gendered.
Yeah.
And there's like this deep calling, and it's just that the women are going to answer first because it's most likely in them, you know, like, divine feminine energy is in both males and females and everything in between. Right. And so is masculine energy. So there's definitely not a gender, but I work with women because it's almost like a soul ache that they can't overlook in a world in which I think males that maybe were born male and identify as male don't feel the same way. It doesn't mean that they're not feeling a call to feminine principles, because I think they do just as much as we do. They're feeling that call more towards community and collaboration and caring and connection and all the C words that are feminine energy, like I think they're feeling that. But the deep ache to shift identity, I think happens more in females. And I think it's just because we've had more, again, effery around the identities we've been handed.
Yeah.
Versus the opportunity to be who we thought we were to begin with. I think we can talk about the patriarchy and the ways that the women have picked up identities because we were handed them, whether or not they were ours to begin with, in a way that has not been handed traditionally to the males in that same way. Right. So
there's a deconditioning process
there's deconditioning
that we all are invited into if we want to live by our soul and by our purpose and who we are. There's something I want to go back to in the beautiful, what you just shared. Talking about astrology cycles, because I too have studied deeply this astrology cycles, especially of the midlife and also of the chrysalis. Because two things I want to point out is one, these initiations are they're universal. We all go through them, right? They're like timed transits. So, and then also with the chrysalis, the other piece, you wove a beautiful story there. And even though the caterpillar doesn't know what it's doing and the butterfly doesn't know what it's doing, there is a code actually, like the imaginal cells, there is this inherent design that is guiding the path. So I want to illuminate both of those just for our listeners to add to what you said, which is that this isn't a flaw in the design. It is the design itself. So it can feel really gooey and icky and itchy in the process, which it does. And I could say, yes, it does. Absolutely. And I'm sure so could you. But it's not because we've done something wrong. And I think that's something that's important to share because we can feel like we're being punished in some way when we're going along, everything's fine. And all of a sudden things dissolve into goo. And we're like, wait a minute, that's not what I signed up for. Because it's
this is not the life I ordered. Hold on. Wait a minute. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But I think it's helpful, even though it's a painful initiation, it can have aspects of it that are challenging for us, that it is designed this way.
Yeah.
And that us going through that and answering the call, it's part of the journey our souls are invited on in this lifetime, is to actually go through these initiatory processes. They're not a flaw. They're not that anything's wrong with you, that it's actually by design. And you have the imaginal cells, even if you don't cognitively know what you're going through, that there is some larger force and some larger design that's guiding the process, which can be a small kind of consolation when you're in the goo.
No. And I love, Jamie, I love that you pointed out, because I think it's just so innately what I mean that I sometimes forget to say it. But it's like, that is why I call the body of work that's been coming through for me and that I've been working with, is I've been calling the initiation codes, because it is like there's a divine code that's in there. That you like, there's a divine order to those things. And that is that caterpillar is tied into the matrix that is nature, like nature has a divine intelligence to it. And if that's as big as the thing that's bigger than you, that you can go, then that there's a natural cycle to your life. And astrology can point to what some of that is going to be, whether or not you look. Yeah. And I also want to say to that there is a cost to looking. And that is kind of the meltdown and all the things that you're going to go through. There's a cost to looking. Yeah. And there's a cost to not looking. It's not like you get on if you don't look, it doesn't happen. Yeah. It does happen, right? Like it's happening because nature is happening to you. And there's an evolutionary cycle that we go through as human beings that is part of the process. And we can work with it or we can ignore it. But either way, it's going to do things in our lives. And it's divinely orchestrated some of those transits are divinely orchestrated for us to look. Just look. Like the first one is a Saturn return that says, are you even looking? It's like, let's look at what are you here to figure out about your life? So, and you would know way more about those. I know enough about astrology to get in trouble, I don't. I'm just starting to really dive into the depths of what this means for people in their midlife, because it's almost like, I think I got there, Jamie, because I couldn't not look at it for my clients. Cause I was like, wait, this is divinely orchestrated. This is not happening to you. It's happening through you, for you, all of the things. Is it mucky? Is it messy humanity? Is it hard in some ways? Yes. But the reward, the butterfly is worth it.
And we have a lot of resistance to it too. I'll just say, just not to take the floor, but a couple years ago, when I was really practicing in astrology, I created a program called Soul Seasons, but originally it was called Midlife Mastery. And I got all this feedback from women in my cohort of like business entrepreneurs. They're like, don't call it Midlife Mastery. Like nobody wants to admit no one's going to take your class. And I was like, why? But it's like, even just admitting, especially as women, that we're in the midlife, like is a whole thing in and of itself. And then it's like getting you to pay attention. So I shifted it to Soul Seasons just to be a little bit more accessible for people. But really it is about these initiations. And so many of us walk through them blind. Like we have no idea.
It just feels like our life is just blowing up all around us in ways. And we're like, what the actual is happening in my life?
I mean, when I talk to women, especially in late 30s, early 40s, I'm like, let me just look at your chart. Because if we don't know what season we're in, it's like going outside and having no idea what temperature it is, what the conditions are. Like we just have no idea. But if we know it's raining, then we can put a coat on, right? If we know that it's going to be really hot, we can get our hat. Like we need to know it's not a terminal diagnosis of a thing, like, oh, Pluto is going to kill you. It's like, oh, it's an initiation. Like it's an invitation. You're apprenticing with a particular invitation that asks you to fundamentally shift how you're being. And it's going to happen. It's going to take you on the ride, but you can either like have fun or at least orient and know what you're up to, or kind of be taken along for the ride. And so,
And I think that the reason why people end up with me and my work currently, and I'm probably similar for you, is because they knew they were being taken for the ride, and they sense that they might be able to find a map somewhere, or like something that can give them a little bit of a wait, I can be more ready for this. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but like you said, it's like, can I prepare? Like, can I, and not to prepare against something. We're not, the word against has got to go away. Like like we're preparing to move through something, and with the right tools, then we are ready. We learn that externally with weather all the time. Like we have this big hurricane. No one was ready because no one heard got the message that this was going to be quite as big as it was when we went through all of that. It's like, and then, right now we're in the middle of this like big storm that came across the whole country. And I think everyone in our area over-prepared because we were like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. I learned my lesson last year. I'm not doing that again. Right. So there's like, where's the harmony between like being surrendered to the process, not trying to control it. I'm not trying to control my way through it all. Control is one of the things that kind of we go through a lot of shifting around. What is control? What is leadership? What is power? That's a lot of what that first one, some of those late 30, early, as some of those early transits are starting to say, what is your relationship to purpose? What is your relationship to identity? What is your relationship to power and your ability to surrender to a process? And can you willingly do the death and rebirth cycle, which is what's about to happen, so there's all this like opportunity, that's also followed by this really sweet transit that's like, okay, let's return to self-love around that. Let's return to like, can we reorient in self-love with this new identity? Can we fall in love with self? Can we find the compassion for all of our parts and the way it's gone off the rails and all the things? We get these tender moments too that are like chew on this. This is going to be a little crunchy, and then softness, and chew and softness and chew. And we do that through the whole thing. It's like, it isn't always crunchy, even though sometimes it can feel that way. And especially if we're avoiding it altogether, it's going to be crunchy. It's like something's going to be crunchy. So
yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh my gosh, you and I could keep talking about this forever. Okay. Why don't we wrap? We'll just call this number one. Just call this number one. Where can people find more out? Because you have so much more to share about midlife and all of this magic and so many things we didn't even get a chance to talk to today. But where can people find you? Where can they get connected and stay in the magic that is Laura Cardwell?
Thank you. Yes, they can find me at lauracardwell.com is my website, and through that they can get access to the foundational guide to the initiation codes and start there. That's the starting point. And then they can follow me on Instagram at Laura Cardwell QIW.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. Well, it's so good to have you here. And thank you, everyone else, for joining us on this episode of the Jaime Fleres Podcast. If you love the episode, please share it with a friend. This is how these conversations get to spread and benefit more people. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And your reviews are also greatly appreciated. If you want to check out Laura's work or have questions about working with me, please reach out. All of the links are in our show notes. And thank you again so much for joining us. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. And thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Jaime.